1. I am an audio engineer. Around 5 years ago, I was working at a very high-end facility with some amazing equipment. The studio looked beautiful. It was quite amazing. Most of my time at the studio was spent recording musical artists and mixing their tracks. I was booked for an 8-hour block to mix some pre-recorded tracks that a producer was going to bring in. To clarify, mixing a song means taking all the individual instrument recordings and balancing volumes and applying effects. After the song is mixed, it's sent to a mastering engineer, who puts the final touches on it and makes it ready for distribution. In most cases, especially if it's through a record label, the mixing engineer and mastering engineer are two different people, since they're two different art forms that utilize different technologies. I like to research my clients before they come in, so I did some poking around on the internet and found out very quickly that the producer coming into the studio is a very accomplished producer who has worked with some amazing artists. I was thrilled. I hadn't worked with a producer of this caliber before. We'll call him the producer. I made sure to get as much information as possible from the studio manager so that I could come into the session well prepared. My manager forwarded me an email from the producer that said, "We're just mixing a few songs." I asked if I was getting an assistant engineer to help. My manager told me that they actually requested that I don't have an assistant. That was a first, but I shrugged it off. I got to the studio early and prepped as much as I possibly could. The producer and the band that he recorded arrived, so I started getting files and such from them to start mixing. As I'm doing this, I see a lot of red flags. The producer brought in 10 songs that he needed mixed and mastering today. Typically, I'll mix 2 songs in 10 hours, maybe 3 if I'm hauling, and not taking ear breaks and such. Furthermore, he wanted it mixed on our large recording console, the giant desk with all the buttons and faders and such. Essentially, bypassing the computer, I let him know the following. 1, mixing 10 songs in 8 hours is going to be very difficult, and that I'll have to sacrifice quality moving that quickly, and that I'll do my best to mix the songs all in one day. 2, I'm not a mastering engineer, but I have experience mastering and can give him some masters that will suffice. I'll provide files they can send to other mastering engineers as well. 3, mixing on a console instead of a computer means that it will be way more time-consuming, since I would be turning physical knobs, pushing physical buttons, and connecting gear and cables and keeping track of all of this. It also means that if they want any edits or changes after today, they'll need to book the studio for at least 2 or 3 additional hours, so that I can set everything up again exactly how it was. I figured that since the producer had worked with such amazing artists before, all of this would make sense to him. I got the impression that he either didn't care or, more likely, didn't realize. He was very nice, but quite dismissive, and essentially told me to mix it on the console. To add to my stress, I started finding all sorts of mistakes and issues in the recording that would take more time to address. Despite this, we worked really well together. I felt I gave him more than enough information about my concerns, so I complied with his requests, knowing full well that we were going to face a plethora of problems down the road. I got to work as fast as I could. The producer was quite eccentric, but we got along nicely, and he was thrilled with some of the tricks I was pulling out of my hat to address all these issues. At the end of every mix, I take copious notes on what physical buttons were pushed, what cables were connected to what, etc. I did this for every client I've worked with, just in case they ever wanted to come back and make edits to their records. Normally, I'll have my assistant or intern do this, but they specifically asked not to have an assistant or intern around. I was able to get through each of the songs somehow. I was honestly impressed with myself. The songs sounded good, but not good, as I didn't have enough time to make them good. They were happy with the mixes. The producer seemed quite surprised that they sounded the way they did, so I took that as a compliment. We ended on a good note, so I thought that was the end of it. A few days later, I get booked again for 2 hours. We normally don't book 2-hour blocks, it's just not worth it. However, I agreed to do the 2-hour because there was another 8-hour session booked directly after, so it worked out perfectly. The studio manager didn't quite understand what I'd be doing in those 2 hours. The client was very vague and would not answer any of our questions about what they wanted to happen in those 2 hours. I show up for the session, and the producer from a few days ago was there. Before I can even say hello, a car that costs more than I make in 2 years comes whipping through the parking lot. This guy jumps out and begins barking orders at me. I put together that this must be the executive producer. For background, the executive producer is essentially the guy that knows nothing about the process but has the money to fund it. It's a fancy name for the person who pays for everything. As he's barking orders at me, about 10 more ridiculously expensive cars pull in. I learned that the executive producer brought possible investors for his new record label into the studio to listen to the mixes and watch the executive producer manage a production team. After the executive producer greeted all his investors, he instructed everyone to go into the studio. I tried to get him alone to talk to him before, but he responded with, "I'm going to do all the talking, you're going to do the work." He clearly wanted everybody to see how good he was at managing a production and such. He asked me to pull up the first song and play for his investors. I told him that if he wants to make any changes to the songs, I need at least 2 to 3 hours to set everything up before we can make changes. I told him I could play the songs for his investors, but I can't make any changes unless I take 2 to 3 hours to set it up. I also said that I can't even do that today since I have another client coming in 2 hours. As I'm saying this, I see the producer behind him smiling, clearly getting a lot of satisfaction from this. The executive producer literally turned red with anger and started yelling. I honestly couldn't understand half of what he said. When the executive producer stopped yelling, the producer cutely said, "I told you so." That's when I realized that the producer had actually been the one who had maliciously complied with the executive producer, to some degree. This is my favorite part. The executive producer handed me a $100 bill and said something like, "You have 10 minutes to set it up." He did this in front of his investors. I'm not sure what he was thinking would happen. Some of them literally laughed out loud and walked out. I was sick of it, so I emceed knowing that I could never set it up in time, making the executive producer look bad in front of his investors. So I started setting it up anyway. I didn't take the $100. As I was setting up, one of the investors came up to me and asked if I was actually able to set it up in 10 minutes. I told him it wasn't possible, so he turned around and walked out. About 10 minutes later, they all left because I didn't have everything set up yet. Later that week, the producer came back to work with me some more. We had a great working relationship from that point on. I talked with the producer about this whole thing, and he said that the executive producer hired him to help get this record label off the ground. He apparently didn't listen to anything the producer advised him on and treated him very poorly. So the producer decided to just comply with whatever executive producer wanted, knowing full well it wouldn't work out. He got sick of the executive producer's antics and just wanted out. The producer informed him about everything that would go wrong before they booked me for the mix, and the executive producer completely disregarded him. The producer told me that the executive producer didn't want an intern or an assistant at the studio for the mix, because he only wanted high-end musical production people there. If assistant is in their title, they don't deserve to be there. It turns out that all the investors pulled out, and the band started to sue the executive producer for copyright infringement. That's a separate issue that I have no info on. 2. Some context. So this happened a summer ago. I'm a college student, and in the summer when I'm home, I typically work in landscaping and landscape design as a laborer. Think laying sod and bricks, building fences and decks, or cutting grass. I also live in Mississippi, so it's hot as balls and humid as hell in the summer. This particular summer I was working on the landscaping side, so I was cutting grass, pulling weeds, upkeep sort of stuff. When it came time to cut grass, I was on weed eater duty. My job was to do trim work, basically cut grass the mower can't reach. The day. So this Thursday was a particularly hot one, just after a good rain, and so it was excessively hot and humid. To add on to this, the job for that day was a contract place that was 20 or so houses arranged in a circle around 2 ponds and a walking path, making the humidity even higher because of the ponds and lack of airflow. Tall trees around and in the place. The lots themselves weren't particularly big, but the place took 9 to 11 hours to do well, and most of the houses also had super cranky old people in them that would complain over the most minor things. I'm talking one weed in a flower box under a bush. So we arrive at like 6:15 and get to cutting and all that good stuff. I grab my weed eater, throw my earbuds in and do my thing. While I weed eat, I am continually walking and occasionally will bump the weed eater with my leg, raising it up a little bit and making the grass slightly uneven every so often, maybe half an inch at most. This isn't usually noticeable, but if it happens up against a house or structure, you can tell if you look for it. So I will typically go back and try to level it out best I can if I notice it happen. I do the whole place, front yards and backyards. We then weed the whole place front and back. We're getting ready to pack up and head home. It's like 4 o'clock by now, when incompetent Dick comes to the job site and starts looking around. He finishes up and pulls John aside, my coworker, my direct boss, and shows him around the place, then leaves. This process took an hour or so myself, John, and Elle, my coworker, have just burnt an hour on overtime doing nothing. By this point in the week, it was typical for us to be running on overtime. John comes over to Elle and I, telling us that we missed a ton of stuff and to grab the weed eaters and a bucket. We then walk around the place and John starts pointing out groups of like 4 blades of grass that are fractions of an inch higher than the others. Barely noticeable shit. You really gotta look for this stuff hard. Furthermore, if you try to cut some of these with a weed eater, they bend from the downwash, or the spinning strings, so you risk gouging a nice 5 to 12 inch circle in the grass trying to cut like 4 blades of grass. We begin to redo the whole place front and back, small ass weeds here and there from under bushes, and doing our best to cut the offending blades of grass. By the second house, Elle and I are bitching to John we are hot and tired. It's like 5:30, and we know this will take us 2 more hours. John tells us he knows this is stupid, and it's not his fault. He understands the stupidity and our pissedness. Cue malicious compliance. Elle and I decide we are going to make sure all offending blades of grass are cut to the same height. That new height, dirt. The thing is, if you cut grass too low, it can die. We knew this, but incompetent Dick and cranky old people wanted it the same height exactly, and that's what they were going to get. We rewalk the place and cut any grass that is against something and over the height of dirt. We also made sure to hold our weed eaters in a way that when we cut the offending grass, we hit the surrounding grass with the full 12-inch diameter of the weed eater, leaving a nice 12-inch circle spot that you couldn't see now, but would when the grass died in a few days. We leveled all the grass against any structure, leaving a nice gouge where walls, fences, and flower beds met the lawn. We finished around 7:30 and headed home, and didn't hear a peep the next day. The next week, the lawns had 12-inch brown circles of grass everywhere. By Tuesday, incompetent Dick talked to John about it. John just told him the offending blades had been cut as he'd asked, and something along the lines of how it was all now uniform height. We couldn't help that some of the grass didn't survive the new stringent height regulations. Incompetent Dick never talked to Elle, John, or myself about it again. A few notes and the fallout. This wasn't the first time and wouldn't be the last time incompetent Dick came to nitpick our work at the end of the day, which would sometimes result in us having to drive across the city or walk a mile or 2 up a road at the end of the day to fix bullshit little things that weren't messed up, adding hours to already long hot days. Though it was the last time we ever had problems at that place. We also got the satisfaction of knowing that incompetent Dick had to take the numerous calls from cranky old people about their lawns for a few weeks. These people would cuss us out even before the incident, So I want to imagine what they told him. The lawns had still pretty noticeable dead spots and scars when I left towards the end of the summer. Also, incompetent Dick saw himself as better than any of the filthy laborers, Elle and I, and would avoid critiquing us to our faces. This is primarily because a few times he nitpicked us directly. We either told him why it was stupid or handed him our equipment and told him to do it himself, which he would then proceed to fuck up. This was a common sentiment held towards all the crews under his supervision, and their reactions when he critiqued them similarly were similar to ours. In the mornings at the shop, he would sometimes talk about how we needed to be more respectful to him because he was our boss, to which people would reply something about him respecting our quality work, which it was 99% of the time. Not nitpicking stupid shit and not showing up at the end of the day to give us more dumb shit to do, such as chop a tree down and then drive off expecting us to load it up when he had an empty open-top trailer and we had a full box truck. What we did made its way to other crews, and they carried out similar antics, which led to him getting a tough time from his bosses who held him responsible for these events. The effects of this general disdain eventually got to him so much you could see it just by the way he carried himself and the stress on his face. He was so bad at his job that he got paid less or at the same rate as the crew foreman under him, while holding the title of being their boss. I know because he would complain about this too when talking to the foreman. 3. This may paint me in a bad light, but I don't care that much. Just a note that this happened in Poland. I'm living in a block of flats with slightly higher standards, meaning we have a gate and our own parking spaces, trash cans, camera system, and everything. I work as a programmer and remotely. I'm also single and I keep mostly to myself. Try to never harm anyone, not get into any drama, just live slowly and steadily alone, barely leaving home except doing groceries. So my neighbors know me as that homeowner that never causes any problems and is also helpful and polite. One time, I had to replace my current bed. It was old, dirty, and I just wanted something better. So I ordered a new bed and dismantled my old one, ready to be taken out. Once every 2 weeks, a truck comes in and checks through the neighborhood to take away all the big things set beside the trash containers. That day was tomorrow. Sadly, I live on floor 3, so taking my old bed alone would just be too hard for me. I asked my brother for help, but he couldn't have done it tomorrow, so he helped today. Before this, our block's terms of service say that you are not allowed to put out big trash except on the day the truck comes. So not wanting to make any outburst, I asked my favorite neighbor for a favor. If I could put it in his parking spot the day before because, well, I wouldn't be able to do it on the correct day. He gave me a thumbs up. Then I checked with another member of the Housing Cooperative Board. If it's fine. Since the owner of the spot knows, he also said it's okay for him. I moved on with the plan. My brother came in, we moved my old bed outside, occupied a spot, and called it a day. That's when the Karen came in. She's around 50 plus years old from the looks. You know, the type that sits the whole day in the window and tries to find something to complain about? She got into my home and tried to explain that it's against our community rules, so I had to have it taken away right now. I, in exchange, tried to explain to her why I did that. I got approval from people and whatnot. She was not having it. She threatened to call the police on me for littering if I didn't get it done today. I said, sure, okay, I guess I am technically in the wrong here, so I'll just comply. I called a private company to take the bed today. I also specifically went to her home and told her it would be done today. She said it's fine. So the truck arrives. They start taking away the bed and so do the police. Apparently, she already called the police without warning me to do anything. I'm livid and literally panicking, not because I was afraid of a fine or anything, but just because it was the first time in my life that someone did something hostile to me, even though I said I'd do what she wants. I explain the whole situation. The police see no problem. They don't even cite me or anything. They just give me a handshake, pat my back, and leave. The The lady that called the police looks out the window and yells, "Thank you, officers!" with a grin. I'm even more upset at this point. I think to myself, you want to perfectly obey the law? Fine, I'll make sure you do. I got the community rules from the council and studied them thoroughly to find potential reasons to make her life hell. I saw her taking out the trash. I hear glass bottles in the bag. I look out the window. She throws it in the wrong container. I call the community board. Bam! Your rent went up because you didn't comply with our sorting garbage rules. Next day, I came back from groceries. I see her car. She parked a little over the line, so it's basically like taking up 2 spaces. I call the police. Bam! She gets a fine. She takes her dog for a walk in our private space. As I watch her through the window, I see her dog pooping, but she doesn't scoop it up. Oh, did you just do that? Call community board with a complaint. She came to me and wanted to apologize. Now here's the part that makes me look bad. I said, no, I don't accept it. Why? Because I'll admit, I am vindictive to people who try to create trouble for others without a very good reason. I said, all I'm doing is making sure you are following the community rules. Is that wrong? And she scoffed at me something rude and went away. I've been doing that for like 3 months now. A month ago, she was kicked off the board for too many rules violations. Today, she moved out. But before she did, she made sure to put a bag of trash on my doorstep while I was away. Sad for her, she's stupid, and the trash contained a letter with her information on it. So I had the last laugh by reporting it to the police. I know rules are rules. I was technically in the wrong first for breaking them. But the moment she went out of her way to enforce them and screw me anyway, that's when the line was crossed. I have no shame for bullying her out of here. I was just doing God's work and ensuring the rules were not broken. Thanks for listening. 4. My dad, a single father with 1 kid, met my mom and eventually got married and had kids. Back then, my dad was working folk, but he had hurt his back at work and was off for several months, and money had gotten tight, to the point that my parents literally had no extra money to spare. We were a loving family, though, but we were okay as long as we had food, which we did. But then I got a bad ear infection and needed antibiotics, but my parents literally had no money at this point. Being in Canada, we had a welfare system in which you can apply for money to help people who are down and out. So my parents head over to the welfare office, where this all starts. They go up to a counter and enter Karen. My mom says my son has an ear infection and has a $10 prescription I need help paying. Karen gets the family details and comes back and says, I'm very sorry you don't qualify for that because you have an employable male in your household. My parents protest because my dad's back, but Karen isn't having any of it. My dad had not been to the doctor because there is not much they can do for a back that's out, other than give pain meds, so without a doctor's note they didn't believe he was actually unable to work. The lady insists there's nothing they can do. This pisses my dad off to no end, and he's not going to let his son suffer with an ear infection. He says to Karen I want an appointment to apply for welfare for myself only. Karen says you can't do that. My dad's getting angrier by the minute. Says, are you denying me my appointment? Karen says, you don't need an appointment, you don't qualify. So, are you denying my appointment, Dad says. Karen says, well, no, fine, you can have an appointment, but it will do you no good. The appointment for him to apply was scheduled for the next day. Enter my dad again, this time with a new rental receipt from a house that was for rent out at this beautiful lake near our town. He said, this is my new rental I found yesterday. I am unemployed and need my rent covered. The lady says, you can't do that. You're an employable male. You need to work. My dad says, well, I'm moving with my 1 son and I can't work since I'm a single parent. The lady laughs and says, you can't just take 1 kid and move out. My dad said, well, I can no longer live with my wife. I am leaving her, so now she is a single mom and qualifies for the medication. Karen, still thinking she will screw my dad over, says you can't just break up with her so she can get welfare. Excuse me, my dad replies. I can break up with her for her feet stinking or bad breath. I don't need a goddamn reason to dump her ass. Karen huffs and says, well, maybe she will qualify, but you don't qualify for that new rental, as you would need to be a single dad, and you can't just take one child and leave, claiming to be a single dad. Out comes a court document saying my dad has sole custody of his first son from his first marriage. The letter states I have custody of my first child before my second marriage, so me and him are leaving. Now I am a single dad, and am qualified for welfare. This pissed off Karen. She knew she just got played. So she tried her best to make the situation difficult for my dad. She says, well, if you leave her, you are not allowed to go over there and hang out. My dad said, excuse me, I have 3 kids with this lady. I will go over and visit my kids any damn time I like. You don't get to tell me when I can visit them. That was the finishing move. Karen had lost every aspect of her case. My dad did qualify for the rent, and she was forced to pass him his emergency check he just applied for. My dad, after getting his check for hundreds of dollars, turns to Karen and says now my ex would like to apply for the $10 medication. She is a single mom without an employable male in the house, so should qualify. He turns to Karen and snarks, but it will do you no good. My mom got the medication, and he rented a cabin on the lake for several months, all while me and my siblings hung out there and enjoyed our summer cabin. 5. The first real job I ever had was as a legal assistant for a sole practitioner family law attorney. I was 20 years old, fresh out of college, and had never had a real job before. I had 0 legal experience, 0 office experience, 0 secretarial experience. The attorney, who we shall call Karen, knew this when she hired me. Karen was at least 60 years old and had had her private practice for 20+ years. When she interviewed me, she had told me that she had just lost her 3rd legal assistant of the year. That is a huge red flag that I wish I had not missed. My first day at work, I realized that Karen was a disorganized, chaotic, manipulative liar and an absolute disaster to work with. At the time of the malicious complaints, I spent the last 3 months being more or less bullied by this woman, called incompetent repeatedly, yelled at for not knowing things I had never been trained on, talked down on, demeaned. I took it all because I was young and I didn't want to leave my first job so soon, because it had been drilled in my head that if you left before a year, it looked bad on your resume. Hindsight is 20/20. If you're in a similar situation, find a new job. Future employers only care if you leave multiple jobs after short time periods working there. It was the morning of a day that Karen had an afternoon trial, and in her truly disorganized and awful fashion, she had waited until the night before to finalize the exhibits. For those who don't know, you typically need to submit exhibits at least a few business days before the trial or hearing, so the court has time to process them. The day of the hearing, most attorneys bring 2 copies of the exhibits in binders with them, an attorney copy for them and a bench copy for the judge. That morning I came to work to a post-it note on my desk that she had submitted the exhibits electronically last night and wanted me to make her attorney copy and the bench copy and put them in 3-ring binders. Okay, can do. I started printing 2 copies of the exhibits. I got the bench copy taken care of and ready, and then started to print the exhibits for Karen's copy. About halfway through printing Karen's copy, the printer said it was out of toner. Okay, no worries. I know for a fact that we had another box of toner in the storage area because it was my job to do inventory. And I had just done inventory and made a note of a box of toner. I went to the storage room, grabbed the box of toner for the printer, Ricoh black toner cartridge, can't remember the exact model, let's say it was Model X, and went back to the printer. When I opened the box, the toner inside was not Model X. It wasn't even for a Ricoh printer. And it was clearly empty. I have no idea how long it had been in there for, but it definitely predated my time there. I got that awful cold wash feeling and went back to the storage area. I tore through everything. There was not another box of toner. I remember how sick to my stomach I felt. She had to leave for trial in an hour, and her copy of the exhibits wasn't finished. After I was done freaking out in the storage area, I walked into her office and informed her that we were out of toner. I explained that we had the right box, but it had an empty bottle of toner of the wrong variety in it. She leveled me with the meanest, coldest stare I have ever had and said, "That's supposed to be your problem to deal with." Tone like ice, face like stone. I was completely shitting myself. I tried to explain again that the box was correct, but the toner inside was not, and she held her hand up in my face. "I'm going to take the bench copy and my incomplete copy, and I am going to trial," she said. "Are you even capable of understanding how badly you have fucked up?" I nodded. "Do you understand that I should fire you? Because this is completely your fault, because you're incompetent and incapable of listening." I nodded again. She stood up from her desk, pushed past me, and went to my desk to pick up the binders. When she came back to her desk, she handed me her personal credit card. "I don't care what you have to do, or who you have to call, or what it costs. But if I come back at the end of the day and the printer has no toner, you better not be here, and I better not see you again." Then she left. I stood there for a few minutes absorbing what the fuck had just happened. Then I started to get pissed off. I was smart. I was a good employee. I put up with way more shit than I should have to put up with. I bent over backwards to help this disorganized crazy bitch. And also, who the fuck puts an empty toner cartridge in the wrong box and puts it back in the storage area? She said to do whatever I had to do to get toner. So, cue malicious compliance. It's important to note here that because Karen was disorganized and bad at running her business, she hadn't gotten any payments from clients at least since I had started, so at least 3 months. I knew that she was running low on funds in her business spending account and racking up debt on her personal account for business expenditures, because I had access to her email and saw a credit card statement. I knew she was tight on money because she would get overdue bill notices in the mail all the time. At that moment, I also did not give a fuck. So I got on the phone with Rico Supplies and explained to the nice lady on the phone that I am in desperate need of toner. Nice lady informs me that they can't get me any today, and the earliest that I could get it in the mail with regular shipping would be 3 days from then. That simply wouldn't do. "Is there a rush option?" I asked. "There's a rush, and there's an overnight. Rush will get it to you in 2 days. Overnight will get it to you tomorrow morning." "How much is overnight?" I asked as the first feelings of evil satisfaction fluttered in my chest. "Overnight shipping is going to run you $185 plus tax," she informed me. I grinned. "So overnight shipping with the cost of 2 Model X toners will be how much?" "About $450 plus tax." Perfect. I gave her the credit card information and placed the order happily. I was happy that I had managed to burn almost $500 of money that Karen did not have, but it still hadn't solved the problem of having toner there today. So next up, I placed a call to our printer repairman, who I had become very friendly with, because he also hated Karen. She was technologically incompetent and rude to him whenever he came to repair the printer. I explained the situation to him and asked him if he happened to have a spare Model X toner on him. To my delight, he did happen to have the toner on him. "But I'll have to rearrange my route to drop it off to you, so there's a delivery fee. And you're gonna have to pay for the toner, obviously. It'll be about $200. Not a problem. Come on by." Printer repairman brought me the toner, happily ran Karen's card for another $200, high-fived me, and left me to my own devices. Later, when Karen came back from the trial, she came back to the printer happily chugging out some new disclosure we had gotten from clients, and she seemed honestly pissed that I had managed to get toner. She dumped her stuff on my desk, went into her office, and I didn't see or speak to her for the rest of the day. The next day, things were very quiet all morning. Just before lunch, the overnight toner came in. Karen only communicated with me through post-it note instructions and through emails. When I came back from lunch, Karen was on the phone and her door was cracked open just enough for me to hear her on the phone. So there's no way you can cancel the order? I heard her ask. Silence for a moment. Yes, I understand that we already have the toner, but I don't want to pay that much for it. No, the order was not fraud. I authorized my assistant to place it. Fine! Then I heard the phone slam down. I know that in the grand scheme of things, my malicious compliance was not all that fantastic. But at the time, I felt like Andy Sachs, staring down Miranda Priestley, telling her that the twins both had a copy of the Harry Potter book. My malicious compliance also had the additional benefit of somehow making Karen a lot nicer to me going forward. She still sucked to work with, and I still hated being there. But she never called me incompetent again. She also never told me that I was incapable of listening again, because I did exactly what she asked me to do. I got the fucking toner. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 107. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories and sent in stories for use in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do... Right, skip that. You know what I'm going to ask you. It's all good, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Okay, let's see. Right, we have birthday shoutouts today. And first up goes to Arky Girl 1966. And their birthday is today. They are 55 years old. Oh, they're saying very nice things about me in their message. It's nice when people say nice things about me. Okay, that's Arky Girl 1966. I hope you have a very happy I hope you have a very happy birthday. And let's see, I think there's one other, two others. I know I have others on the 30th. Let's see. And number 2 goes to... All right, this one goes to Temperance. Yes, like the show Bones, the message says. This comes from her mother, Deirdre. And her daughter is turning 10 today. I hope you have a lovely, lovely birthday, Temperance. Make sure Mama is spoiling you, okay? I insist. And... Okay, that one. There is another shout out, but I have a number of days to do this, so I'm going to do it on the next video. It's not a birthday shout out, it's for Hanukkah. I don't know how to fit Happy Hanukkah into a birthday song. That's really my problem. It would seem inappropriate. Okay, there we go. December 2nd. There we go. Okay, I thought there was another one. And we have another birthday shout out. That is... oh, right. Okay, I think I did one for Jamie on the 10th. If I didn't, I hope you had a good birthday, Jamie. I hope I didn't leave that out. I'd feel terrible if I did. And also to Shelley C. Shelley, I hope you're having a delightful birthday today, and that you both spoiled each other on your respective birthdays. Right, I think we're all done on the birthdays. Right, and before I go, I'd like to sing happy birthday to those 3 people, if I can remember their names. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Shelley. Dear Arky Girl. Dear Temperance. Happy birthday to you. Alrighty, there we go. Yay me, pass on back. I don't know why I'm checking the date. I better check the date there. But no, it's the 30th. Of course, I just did birthday shout outs on the 30th. I'm not losing my mind, I swear. Did I have anything else to say? Oh, hang on. It sounds like people in the distance are having a bit of a party. Well, I'm done recording. Do with the like. I'm sure I have something else to say, but I'm completely blanking on it. Oh, it's December tomorrow. There'll be a shiny new Hellfreezer logo probably going up. I'll put it up in a few hours, so some of you will think it's not December yet, Hellfreezer. Why are you putting your logo up in December? And to you folks, I say there are other countries. And we all have our own fancy, crazy, wacky time zones. So yeah, put up at midnight. That's just over 6 hours from now. I'll need to sort of background for it, but that'll be my logo for the various things and stuff for Christmas. And then I'll change it back to the fire. I'm just going to keep the fiery one as my main logo for a while. I'll change it back in January, probably. Oh, before I go, if you do want a birthday shout-out or you want to send a story in or anything, contact info is in the description of the video. That is kingofthecities@gmail.com. kingofthecities@gmail.com. Best not to put your birthday shout-outs in the comments, because I can guarantee I will see them and then forget about them because I don't have a reference. I've got a little folder in my emails. I check that with every video so I can keep track of everything. Alright, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.